Welcome to the Leather Lounge, a weekly show recorded live every Tuesday where we explore the latest innovations in the Bitcoin ecosystem. From DeFi and dApps to digital art, we bring you in-depth conversations with developers, artists, and community leaders who are shaping the future. Whether you're here to learn about cutting-edge projects or to deepen your understanding of blockchain basics and decentralization, Leather is your go-to source for all things Bitcoin. Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. All right, hello and welcome back to the Leather Lounge, where each week we bring you conversations with the most prominent founders, builders, artists, and innovators in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm your host, Sean Longstreet, and today we're welcoming back to the show Joe Vezzani, founder and CEO of social analytics platform LunarCrush. This is Joe's second appearance on the lounge, and today we're focusing on the interplanetary treasure hunt with Nakamoto 1. Going to be talking about the origin story, how it all happened and came together, and how this gets people dreaming about recovering all of that digital stockpile of Bitcoin, crypto, and NFTs waiting to be discovered and unlocked on the south pole of the moon. So, as this is his second time, definitely go back and check out the first appearance on the lounge. Highly recommend it. We talked about LunarCrush's features. We really did a deep dive on that. That'll be episode 24 if you missed it. So definitely go back and check it out. But for right now, I want to welcome back Joe. Thanks for coming.
What's up, Sean? Thanks for having me, man. Great intro.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we got a lot to get into because it's super exciting. The last time you were here in October, we briefly touched upon this LunarCrush like mission to send crypto to the moon, literally. But at that point, it was still uncertain. It was kind of like, it might happen, it might not. We're still in this waiting game. So what was it, around January that you guys, like, it was all systems go and it was time to go?
Yeah, I got the call in January, and with anything of that scale, as a fun project for the ecosystem and for the industry, to send Bitcoin to the moon. Like, people listening right now might not even know that we're actually talking about sending Bitcoin to the actual moon is what we did up on a SpaceX rocket. Oh, that we're literally talking about that. But with anything with space, it takes time, right? And I think when Forrest from Lunar Outpost, they have the lunar rover that had the private key on it. He messaged me. It was about 4 years ago. And in his message was something along the lines of, hey, we're going to send this thing up to the moon. It's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. Right? And then, that took 4 years. But, with anything else, timelines just get pushed in space. And so when we first started this thing and we got it out to the world, it still ended up being almost 18 months or 2 years before, the actual rocket went up to the moon. So you got to be patient with it. So I was just kind of dabbling it out there. I think I kind of talked about it, here and there over the years, but we didn't really know it was go time until January. And then we got the launch date. And it's been a crazy process, right? And we documented all of this. And if anyone wants to go back and check out, the highlights tab on the @Nakamoto1 handle on X, or the media tab there, you'll see some of these kind of just crazy videos that we did, showcasing, what we were trying to accomplish, the mission behind what we were doing. And then also the live stream of how we got this private key onto the rover, right? And what we did there. And, it's always fun, when people come and they're like, they hear about this. They're like, oh, you've got the private key. And then I'm like, just send them a link. That's all I do is send them a link to the live stream. They're like, oh, wow, you guys did take a lot of time, energy, and care into this process. It wasn't just something that, we just pulled a rabbit out of a hat with. We thought through this process of how we could do this, how we could create humanity's treasure chest on the moon is the way that we really thought about it. And then how can we wrap, a cool brand with Nakamoto 1 and a community around that to really kind of serve the Stacks ecosystem and serve the crypto industry as a whole. Something fun to do, in a little bit of a bear market here, or a lull in a bull market, whatever you want to call it. So it ended up being a really awesome and fun project for us, for the Stacks ecosystem, for Lunar Outpost, who was the actual rover that went to the moon. They had all these other crazy missions. Nokia wanted to test LTE on the moon so astronauts could make phone calls to each other. There were a bunch of other missions on that lander, and we got to go see the launch, and everyone there was talking about Nakamoto 1, and they're like, oh, this is so cool, this is so much fun, like I love it. So it just kind of brought some excitement to an otherwise, I would say, like extremely technical deployment and crew of people. And so I thought it was a cool kind of juxtaposition of like fun and like extremely talented, smart engineers kind of coming together to do something that just brought a little bit more life. And the mission was really to inspire this next generation about blockchain technology, about physics. And now, there's probably, I'm hoping a young kid out there that somehow catches wind of Nakamoto 1 and starts to think about what a world would look like where they can, send their own rover up there to get it. Or at some point, maybe they go up there and get it. And so it's going to happen at some point. We have 2 Bitcoin that we put on this rover. There's a bunch of stacks on there. There's NFTs on there. People can send, Ethereum, they can send anything. We put a bunch of keys up there. And so as this treasure chest grows and grows, at some point, it will make financial sense for someone to go get it. It will pencil out that the cost to go and get this thing will either be break even or maybe more, depending on what the price of Bitcoin is. And I'm sure, everyone listening, and you and I included, are pretty bullish on, the future of Bitcoin and what that means. And so at some point in our mind, we know someone will go get it. And that's such an exciting endeavor to think about. So had a lot of fun. It was a great experience. And, now Nakamoto 1 potentially can turn into something more exciting than even just sending things to the moon. So that's the fun part. What other things can we do here on Earth?
Great. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to unpacking all that. But let's, speaking of extended timelines and price and all that, I think a couple months ago, there was this anticipation of everyone's bags getting pumped forever. And social sentiment was like very, very bullish. So I wanted to check in with you and what you're seeing on LunarCrush, and what social sentiment is saying right now. I know there's a lot of uncertainty with Trump's plan, tariffs, what the economic outlook is within the United States, but then globally as well, because I hear, M2 money supply globally is maybe going to be a little bit more liquid, which could be supportive for the Bitcoin price. So I wanted to get your thoughts because this is very much on your radar. So yeah, what can you tell us about insights from LunarCrush?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of personal insights and then insights that I see. I'm more than happy to share some stuff if that's
Perfect. Yeah, please
that's
do.
all right as well.
Yeah.
I can, I'll pull up a chart of Bitcoin here, but I'll kind of start with, your question around tariffs. And, it's a good point where, people thought it was going to be this kind of like perma bull market, especially, with the new administration that got in and the tailwinds for the regulatory environment that people were really hoping for. And a lot of those things I think are coming into fruition. What I think people didn't realize in the first, 100 days here of a new administration is there was going to be a lot of jockeying for position internationally. And, I think some people probably thought tariffs were the way that that was going to happen. I don't know if people thought that the tariffs would be coming on so aggressively and what that would mean to the market overall. But if we step back and just kind of look at the macro setup from where we were, right? We've had, rates moving up, right? And so everyone's kind of been moving, if you have extra capital, into these money market accounts, into these long-term savings accounts. Maybe you're still kind of more old school and you're using things like CDs, right? And these are more traditional markets, right? The AI kind of bull run was just absolutely on fire. You had thousands of employees at places like Nvidia that now had net worths of over $10 million, right? That had no idea that that was going to happen. And so you had like a lot of capital moving into those markets, which, that Mag 7, really raised up, the traditional equity markets to a certain spot where people, that could start unwinding. You have a new administration coming in. You've got, inflation potentially holding still or tapering, but you've got a Fed that doesn't really want to move or take too much action, right? Because they don't know where the direction of everything's going to go either. And so we have this kind of interesting setup here. And, I think with, if I had to guess, I would say that the Trump administration with the tariffs is a little bit of a, negotiating tactic, right? It's like kind of negotiating for a new car. if someone wants to, you're trying to buy a car for, you've got 15 grand to buy this car, maybe you start at 11 with a negotiation and you end up somewhere in the middle. So we'll kind of see how that turns out with everything that's working right now. But I think that the most interesting part to me is we've never seen a extremely positive macro environment with an extremely positive regulatory environment for Bitcoin. That's never existed yet in history, right? It's always been, even if we have a great macro environment, we've had the strongest headwinds of any industry that's ever existed, right? Like you've got people, like Operation Choke Point, trying to make sure people can't even get capital into cryptocurrencies. You've got a bunch of different lawsuits against some of the largest companies and smallest companies in the industry in the United States. You've got the SEC going after, companies and basically bleeding them dry of capital, right? Before they, finally find these companies and they can't even pay the fine because they have nothing left because they've been, battling this thing that turns out to not be completely untrue, right? And now you've got companies like, how do they get retribution for that? So I'm just laying the landscape for the environment that Bitcoin was in, right? No ETF, all of the building wasn't there. And so that's where I get really bullish on is we at some point the market will flip bullish, right? It's the markets aren't going to go down forever. If they were suddenly going to go down forever, it'd be an unprecedented event that's never happened in history, right? And so markets will turn bullish, and then Bitcoin will have this insanely bullish regulatory environment that we've never seen, tailwinds, right? ETFs, sovereign wealth funds, countries looking at this, companies that are now buying this, banks can now hold it on balance sheets. This is an unprecedented time. And so you just want to have that set up ready to go. And I think, a lot of people listening and also myself, over the last even 90 days here are kind of wondering, man, Joe, that's like, this setup is just unbelievable. Like, and then this morning, you wake up and Bitcoin like drops another 2K, right? And we're about to like dip under 80 again. And you're
Yeah.
wondering why is this happening? And it is the uncertainty that's there right now. And it is, I think, a more macro oriented thing where Bitcoin is still kind of trading like a large cap tech stock, right? It's been very correlated to like the Invesco QQQ. It's been very correlated, to the Meg 7, stocks that are out there. And so it's gonna trade like that, right? And that's kind of the way that people are trading it, at least now and for the foreseeable future. At some point, it potentially becomes this systematic hedge, right? Versus what's going on. But like in the meantime, it's going to trade like a high beta tech stock, and at some point, all of these other forces are going to come into play. Like the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges is sinking rapidly. Supply shock, like all of these things that I'm saying. But then again, you say, Joe, the price just went down another 3 grand today, and we're just all getting torn to shreds in the altcoin market, right? So it's a little bit of a hard thing to understand, but markets are forward looking and things will switch under your nose very quickly. And then suddenly there'll be a bunch of negative news, but the price will continue to go up, right? And so you want to kind of place your chips where you can. I mean, you did have a very solid legal preamble before this, so I can say if you've been thinking about, not financial advice, but if you've been thinking about it, now may be the time to start pushing some chips on the table. And so that's the way I kind of think about the market in a macro sense. And then what you do as an investor, as a trader, as an operator, depending on if you can make moves with what you have. A lot of people I know are just like, hey, I'm just going to like slam as much Bitcoin away as humanly possible. I just buy every week, and I think that's an amazing strategy. And I think that's probably the strategy that most people should have. It's like, hey, whatever you do really well to go make money at, go continue to do that thing. And then, stay invested in risk on assets. And, depending also on your age range, like, if you're under 65 and you're not looking to retire, in the next like 8 years, like you should be in risk on assets, right? That's going to be the best return for you, unless you just can't sleep. If you can't sleep, then like be more conservative, and that's okay. Know who you are. But there's some interesting things here where when I look at sentiment, what we do at LunarCrush is we're pulling in and processing 50 million posts an hour across Bitcoin and tons of different topics and Tesla and you name it, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, like we have everything in here. And so, there's thousands of mentions of Bitcoin every single hour. We pull those in. We look at those things for how many there are, how many people are talking, what's the virality of all those things. And then what we also do is look at, are these posts kind of bullish or are they bearish? And if you look at like August 4th, 5th here, Bitcoin went and tapped 4K. This is when the yen carry trade was unwinding, and suddenly people thought all global like equity, all global, money supply is going to become suddenly illiquid, and so people panicked, and we had this huge kind of like drop down. That was a very negative time in sentiment. And then if you look about, like 2 weeks ago, and this hit like 74, but intraday it actually got a lot lower. The sentiment was actually down in the 60s, and it was the lowest it's been since that day where we thought like all global liquidity was just going to zero before it unwound and you can see it move back up. And even today with where we're at, like sentiment is still, at what we're kind of calling Bitcoin's baseline, and even as we kind of move lower, right? Even as you have a whale out there that's trying to, short Bitcoin, with 500, million dollars or whatever they're doing, turned out to be a really good trade right now. We'll see if we'll see if they decide to sell that. We don't know what the plan is if they're hedging for something. This, the point here is that, you have a lot of data points, whether they're swirling around in your head, whether you're a technical trader that's looking at RSI, if you're looking for a bearish or bullish cross in whatever asset that you're trading, social ends up being a really good supplementary data point to that, right? And once you start to kind of look at social media for some of these data points, it's a reinforcing piece that's going to allow you to make better decisions, right? Whether you're an individual trader that's out there looking, I'm just trading stacks, or I'm just, trading whatever other altcoin that you're interested in, whether you're trading Bitcoin, or if you're more of a developer, right? Maybe you have a little model that you're working on, right? And you want to add more data into that model to say like, hey, how confident in this model that it's a buy or a sell right now? Having social sentiment in there is a huge indicator. That's a reinforcement to these models and to the learning models that are out there now. And there's no difference between that person that, is I would say, hobbyist pro trader, and even someone, like a BlackRock that's out there in a, $10 billion long short hedge fund. Everyone's trying to do the same thing. And there's so much data out there. And how do you gain that edge in the market and what's going on? You kind of have to be looking at things from a social perspective. And, at LunarCrush, that's kind of what we try to do, right? Like, I think a lot of people are looking at the market from this perspective, market cap, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, like going down this cascade here. And what we try to do is look at the market from more of like a social perspective, right? And so when I tap on alt rank here, you're going to see a lot of green because these are the projects that have a strong community right now. The market volume is increasing or beating the market. These projects' price performance is beating the rest of the market. And we correlate all those things. And so if you're a project out there and you're trying to say, hey, how do I get out to a lot of people? How do I, spread the word on, what I'm trying to accomplish and what I'm building, with my project? If you're just kind of skipping out on social, which like I think most projects know you just can't do right now. But if you're underperforming from a social perspective, it's having an impact on the community as a whole. It's having an impact on how many developers are coming to your protocol. It's having an impact on potential partnerships that you would not think, maybe align, but they do align because someone has another idea than you. So we just really try to take a more of a social look at the market. And it's not just crypto. We've got 32 other categories that people can look at. So if you're into NCAA basketball and you're looking at March Madness right now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm basically going to fill out a bracket based on who the most popular teams are. And I'm just going to go straight most popular teams, who's gonna win this thing. Even though I did go to Michigan State, they're number 22 on here, so I might have like a little bias at the end there because I think they're going to take it this year. You can search anything, right? So you can search Bitcoin, you can search different words. And what we're really trying to hone in on is kind of being like search for social media. But our hearts have always kind of been in crypto, and that's our main category here. Most of our traffic still comes through here, and we love that.
Well, to the point that the trend is your friend, this is such a powerful tool, and you're really democratizing and aggregating all this powerful information. And what is it, $30 a month for a subscription?
Yeah, for an individual plan. And it's a great point. I was talking with another team yesterday, and I said, a lot of the big funds and firms have had something kind of like this over the years, right? They are listening to social. They are out there trying to gain that edge. They're just, paying their own team like $1 million a year to try and stand something up that is maybe 10% of what we've built, right? And so you're getting the same thing that these funds are now getting for $30 a month that they're paying $1 million a year for. So it, like you said, we're democratizing that opportunity for investors to have the data that they otherwise wouldn't have.
Wild. What a powerful tool. Well, all right. That's an amazing recap of kind of where we are right now. Do you have any like are you kind of in the camp of it's kind of going to be choppy sideways for the next 3 to 6 months, or are you like get through April, May, we're going to get back to 100K? What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of operators and a lot of investors have already taken their chips off the table. I think, even if you look at, Warren Buffett, he's got, I don't even know how many, he might have $300 billion in cash now. Imagine the interest he's earning on that. I think those people are starting to think about deploying that capital and placing their bets back in the market in interesting places. I don't think they're going all in today, but I think they're starting to think about that process. I think, if you don't want to think too hard and, you're never going to hit the perfect bottom, you're never going to sell at the perfect top. I think Bitcoin looks a lot better at 80 than it does at 108. And I think if you were thinking about investing in Bitcoin and you haven't yet, and you saw it at 108 and now it's sitting here at 80, I'm probably asking you, like, what are you thinking? Why aren't you moving now? Right? You think you're going to get it at 77? You're going to get it at 74? We can have one piece of news that changes everything, and Bitcoin sitting at 94 tomorrow, and you've missed the 80s forever. Right? And so I think that's the part where, if you're just kind of paying attention and you kind of have to know yourself and you got that tidbit of news, like really trust your heart and think about the last couple of bear markets and bull markets and the way you truly felt in those and the way that you truly think you should have made a move, right? Like when like if a bull market comes and like you're out there with your phone just like showing your significant another and you're like freaking out, that's probably like your internal thing that like you might want to let go of some right now if you are a trader. If not and you hold forever, that's the thing, but it's pay attention to those. And so I think right now it's an interesting time. I think things are cooling off a little bit with the administration based on the first like 60 days that we've had, and I think some of that news will start to potentially get better. But I think there's a lot of people sitting on a 4% money market account, and now that the 10-year is coming down, they're going to be itching to move that into risk on assets. I think some people have moved into more kind of consumer staple things for a little bit, like Johnson and Johnson, like some of these like stocks or, but if you're in crypto, there's only a couple other places that you want to go. But man, some of these altcoins are off 60, 70%, right? And they have these huge treasuries. They're building, there's tons of activity. It's like, Stacks is a great one. It's like, hey, you didn't like Stacks at like 250, but now you have a chance under 60 cents. Like, what are you thinking? So that's kind of my thought process there.
Yep. Or this is like you said, it's a great opportunity, a great accumulation phase, time to understand what your game plan is going to be, plan accordingly.
Right.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. What do you say we transition back to Nakamoto one? And let's start with, you gave us a really good like recap of kind of big picture, but I'd like to go step by step and would like to go, the very first time you thought, let's put crypto on the moon. What was that transition from that's just a crazy idea to we can make this happen?
I think anything was on the table once we knew something was going to the moon. Like once we knew that there was a, piece of, even just one piece of metal, whatever it may be, ended up being a rover. But once we knew an actual physical thing was headed to the moon, you immediately, your mind goes like this, right? And you start to think about fun things that you could do. And when we first started this, we're like, oh, let's be the first people to put Bitcoin in the moon. But there were, a couple of different projects that were trying to do that ahead of us. So we're like, oh, we're not gonna, be the first people. The mission that tried to do that originally didn't make it. So it looks like we are the first people that put Bitcoin on the moon, which is pretty cool. We even have, I've applied to the Guinness Book of World Records, you can't be like the first or something. It's like you have to have the most. So I put in for like most Bitcoin on the moon. So we'll see if we can get that. But it was just it was something that was a humanity first. I've always been kind of obsessed with, outer space and rocket launches and watching all those SpaceX launches from the early days got me so excited about what's possible out there. And SpaceX has really kind of unlocked, outer space and the like what they call this lunar cis orbit, which is the area between like the moon and the Earth, and how you can do commerce there. And so when Forrest reached out, I brought it back to the team, and we just had a couple of different brainstorming sessions. And Ian on our team was like, "What about treasure hunt?" And we all just were like, "Yep, treasure hunt it is. How can you not do a treasure hunt to the moon?" And then we started to come up with different ideas for that. How could we get Bitcoin there? How can we build a brand, and an NFT project around that? At first the idea was, to basically you needed to own and get to an Android in order to unlock the rover. There lots of legal around that, which is 3 years ago now, which we're in a different place today, where they said,
Yeah.
that's a security, or, it was too much like a gambling game. Also, there were some laws there. So we said, you know what, these are collectibles, but we'll send it all and it'll be a treasure hunt. So we went through a lot of different iterations there, but it is a fun thing to, task your team and to also think about like, hey, we're probably the first people in history that are like thinking about solving this problem about how to not see the private key, but also get the private keys etched onto a piece of metal, attach it to the rover. And that's why, we ended up doing that live stream. We have like 3 or 4 different camera angles, always looking and keeping, the private key basically like in view of the camera. Like again, all live streamed. We had this awesome team come in and kind of make sure that can happen across all of our different channels. And then, just everything there, like getting Lunar Outpost organized to a way where they've got their team and their engineers there, and they had to think about all that process of it's little but weight and how that will change and where does it go on the rover to not mess with their mission. And then actually making that happen with their team and our team, writing custom software that would give us these private keys. We had a PC that was there connected to, we bought this like old miniature like CNC machine, just this engraving machine, because we wanted the dumbest machine possible with no memory.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of that process, taking a small like mallet, like, small sledgehammer basically to the laptop, we just destroyed it, right? We're like, hey, this thing is gone. And then finding out after we did it the first time, when we went back and we scrubbed and looked the entire footage, that there was just like a small piece. The camera guy just went like this a little bit, or like the guy had he had like a piece of paper over the laptop, and his hand just slid down just a touch, where you can just see like it was like a letter or two of the private key. But we decided that we can't have any small, little, even tiniest possible thing. And so we had to go get a brand new laptop. We had to reload everything and then restream another 50 minutes. It was actually like quite an experience. And then we destroyed the second laptop too. And so it was just a crazy experience to make that happen. And, you go through those really small, minute moments to create an experience for people, that they can have fun with, and then ultimately mint out these NFTs and create this community. Launch a meme token in Droid that kind of rewards people who minted this thing out. And the way I think about it now is, it's kind of like VFriends and Gary Vaynerchuk with VaynerMedia. They're a media company, they're an advertising company, and then they launched like this NFT project to kind of bring a different type of community in. I feel like with Nakamoto One and the brand there, and with Droid, it's it's a token, it's a meme, and it's an NFT collection, and now it could turn into this, I feel like, awesome marketing and advertising company. It brings something different that a lot of Web3 communities, I feel like, don't have, right? It's all infrastructure. And, maybe there's something interesting that can happen there, especially in the Stacks ecosystem with, this growth of SBTC, minting out 3,000 Bitcoin, like in, under a week for both mints is like incredible. How could Droid and Nakamoto One turn into something as almost like a shepherd for marketing for this ecosystem? And how can LunarCrush really spin that IP out and have it be its own thing that's kind of owned by the stakeholders of the token and the NFT? So I'm trying to think about interesting ways, trying to work with the Stacks Foundation and everyone else to say, hey, how can we turn this into something amazing for the ecosystem? Because it does have this kind of awesome storied history now, right? And so what's the next generation of it? And so as a small team of 5 at LunarCrush that manages thousands of individual customers, hundreds of API customers on a day-to-day basis, we were also capable of launching, Nakamoto 1 to the moon, right? But that's a lot for 5 people. And so how do we really lean on the community to, make this something even greater than it is today is what we're really looking to do.
It's just so imaginative, innovative, and involves so much problem solving and patience, like you said. Okay, so you said it started about 6 years ago, is that right? Like
About four
first
years
idea,
ago.
4 years
4
ago?
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was just you had a connection with someone who was sending a device, a rover, to the moon. So that was the step one. What was the connection there?
Yeah, Forrest and we met back in, I think it was 2016. We were both mentors for a Techstars. If people know Techstars, like Startup Accelerator, we were both mentors for, I think it was in Detroit when we just, randomly both flew in and, you try to give time a little bit back because I had went through a Techstars program. And, I think what they do is they try to match up, people that have like operational and technical experience to help these young founders kind of figure out what their next steps are. Forrest, obviously, like an MIT doctorate, he was, more the technical side, and there were some cool projects there of like, different drones and things like that. And then I was more on the operational side, and we ended up being matched as mentors for all these people coming through. And so, we just had time to kind of chat in between and kind of became buddies and had a beer afterwards and stayed in touch and, pinged each other once in a while. And then he pinged me right there and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I had no idea that he was even working on Lunar Outpost, or I didn't know Lunar Outpost was as far along as they were. And so the fact that they, had a rover and the contracts and multiple now different voyages that they're contracted to do with, with NASA and other commercial projects is incredible. So yeah, we just stayed in touch, and it's a great example of, talking and reaching out to people that you otherwise, might not, normally have a connection with. Just saying hello and, asking someone to go have a drink after work or whatever else it may be to get to know them. And then, the next thing you know, you're the first people to put Bitcoin on the moon.
It's so crazy. So I this was on my radar. I've been around in the Stacks ecosystem for a long time. So this was on my radar since the beginning. And I saw the opportunity to send NFTs and any kind of donation. So me and a lot of other artists in the ecosystem, we've sent numerous NFTs. So I know it's there. And last week when I'm located in France, and I got a little notification on my phone saying that we could see the eclipse. And it was first thing in the morning, and I told my kids to get up. It's freezing outside, so but it was like going to go down soon, right? So we said like we have to go out. So I grabbed our telescope, like lugged it outside so we could get a clear shot. And I'm looking at the moon and realizing like I have art up there. Like my art is on the moon, and I couldn't even process it. Like you probably have had these kind of emotional moments where you're realizing like the gravity, so to speak, of it, where how profound it is and inspiring too. So I think what's so incredible about this is that it's not just a treasure chest that's like frozen in time. People can still send and like augment the treasure that's there, right? It doesn't ever close. You just send it to the address. And that only will like amplify the mimetic effects, the social sentiment around it. So yeah, I'm just so incredibly inspired. And I also love the timepiece element of it as well. In some ways it is a snapshot in time when I'm looking back at a lot of the pieces that were donated. But like I said, it's also like a living document. So yeah, I just my own personal connection with it. It's incredible and inspiring. So two directions I want to go next is one, what does it mean for you from an inspiration, from a inspiring, younger people, like you said, you never know if there's a kid listening to the show right now thinking, oh my gosh, that's on the moon. I want to build the machine to go recover, because who knows, in like 2 years, 5 years, it's going to be worth it. It'll be a financial, like you recoup your cost and then some, because who knows what the price of Bitcoin will be at that point. So yeah, just talk to us about what this means for you as far as inspiring innovation, creativity, and bold thinking from future generations.
Yeah, thanks. And I love that, you said you're looking up at the moon and having that feeling, because even before people knew about this project and I knew about the project, we had, touched the rover or anything. I was like, wow, something that I had my hands on or something that I was a part of is like on that thing. And, I'm like coming out and feeding an animal at night and walking back in before the chaos of the house descends upon you. And you just took a quick look up to the moon, and you just take another one deep breath and you go, wow, like, that thing's far away and something that I'm a part of is there. So I love the fact that you can have that experience too, and it doesn't hit everyone like that. I'm sure back in the day when people were, I couldn't imagine stepping on the moon. They probably felt that times 1,000. But the fact that I could bring that to other people that care about it is huge. And I love that, because that's the feeling that I got. So it's great to hear you say that. And, this kind of, the inspiration part, I would say is right, kind of hand in hand with that. You know, this project, I think you had to be the right person to really have that feeling of how cool it was and understand it. It's always been kind of like hit or miss when I tell people about it. The day that we landed on the moon, I'm sure everyone has all these like family text threads that they're on, right? And so like I'll send stuff here there about it, and then but it's been so long, and it's like I don't want to say anything until it's like actually happened, And like I think there was some sort of local news channel that picked it up or something. I know even CNN wrote something on it, and I just took like a screen cap and sent that to like one of the family threads, and I'm on kind of like, hey, like I'm pretty proud of this thing that I did. And then just like no responses. And then like someone sent another picture of like one of the other like a kid's legs or something. And like all these likes, and like, it was like one of the toddlers, one of the kids, one of my like son or my daughter. It's just like one of those things. And suddenly it's like this influx of interaction. And I was like, no one, nothing for the the first guy on the moon thing, nothing for the Bitcoin on the moon thing, but the kid, but it was always it's a good lesson a little bit in like the right person will strike them right in the heart, right? And there will be, like you're saying, there'll be some kid that's watching this, or some adult, right? Like doesn't matter. Like I would love, sure, if it was a group of students, at one of the STEM schools that just like heard about this and wants to be a part of it, and they're have the technical capability to do it. But it could be anyone. But it's just if someone sees this and they look and they say, wow, those people took the time out to showcase this, to, actually make it possible for someone to potentially retrieve it. They put enough, time, energy, effort that, ended up getting the donations and the NFT sales that we had to send all of this to the moon so that it actually is recoverable and makes sense. Like, I think once someone sees that and the right person sees that, then they will be inspired to go and be a part of it in an interesting way. And I think any, student or, that wants to go and achieve this, if imagine, it's like if some kid kind of figures out even how to get close, even how to get their own rover even into like orbit, like that kid is now like securing jobs forever, or hopefully they just start their own company and they don't go work for anyone else, right? So I think that's cool. And if we can touch a couple of people that way, to bring more to our industry, to get more inspired about Bitcoin, to understand how important it is, and then also to build cool applications. That's why we chose Stacks as the layer 2 to build this on, right? Like we didn't just like mint NFTs and we were done. Like we turned it into a game. There was gamification there, and you needed smart contracts for that, right? And we even did this before, like runes or BRC20s or ordinals kind of were like found, and it always existed, but found.
Yeah.
We did it before that, right? And so, but it wouldn't even have worked if those did exist, right? And so the fact that Stacks is so closely aligned with Bitcoin, right? It just made sense, where it's like, hey, if you're going to send something to the moon and it has to last for hundreds of years, what do you think could potentially be the closest thing, right? And so that's why we chose that. And so I think people kind of seen that. They see the detail that went into it. They can watch these videos, these awesome videos that we put together with all the different partners. Hopefully they're inspired to do something great and they bring more to the ecosystem. They're inspired by LunarCrush. Who knows, maybe we get to hire someone one day that, was like part of this, or developers. So for us, it was really this kind of like brand awareness, but we never really thought about it as like, hey, like LunarCrush is going to get a bunch of stuff from this, right? It was more hey, what are we doing for the industry as a whole? And everything that we would have gotten, we just sent to the moon anyway, right? We tried to build that treasure chest up to be as big as possible. And so, even today with Bitcoin at a low, there's still almost 225 grand in there, right? So imagine if you had $225,000, you just slam that in the market today, like we talked about earlier, you're probably looking pretty good in 18 months to 5 years from now when someone actually can maybe think about getting this thing.
Yeah. I'm coming back to I'll put my former teacher hat back on, because when I think about the potential for like free marketing, for example, if there are arts programs anywhere in the world, they could so easily do a school project or a class project, right? Here's our art, here's what we're making, and we're going to mint them as NFTs on Gamma, and we're going to send it to the moon. What a great way to bring attention to a program that's being innovative. So I don't know. Hopefully, any teachers out there are listening
I
and
love
can
that.
pass this opportunity on, because it's there for the taking, kind of like the treasure chest on the moon right now, but so accessible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing idea.
So what about? I guess we're running a little bit of time. Okay, I do want to hear about the bootstrapping efforts, and then the droid token as well. So what are some of the logistics around that?
Yeah, so we had, when we originally launched this, I would say it was like worst NFT bear market, or at least things were coming down, right? And so we wanted to raise as much money as possible. We just kind of looked around at the market. We said, what are NFTs going for? We thought that these were really awesome PFPs for people. And so they, I think they were like 400 stacks or something. With any market dynamic out there at the time, we didn't sell a lot of them, right? And we ended up being so far away. We thought the launch was going to happen. We thought it was kind of starting to get close, and so we were like, okay, let's get these out into the world. But the launch ended up being so far away, right? And so I think it resonated in that day. Also, I'm not sure if you remember that day, but we still had like potentially 39-minute block times on stacks.
Yes.
Right. And so it's
Yeah.
like it's not very conducive to this kind of like virality, quick, oh my gosh, I got this. And then, imagine like trying to mint 2, 39 minutes, and then you got to get more, mint those, maybe another 20, maybe get a couple of small 5-minute
Right, because it was
blocks in there.
sequential, right?
Right. So like
Yeah.
getting to an Android was just like an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
And so the fact that anyone even did it was like pretty cool. But as we got closer and then the market was where it was at, we just said, hey, let's do basically like a virtually free mint. And so, most of the people that got the early Androids were just like even people on LunarCrush's team, or, I think there's only a couple people out in the market that actually got them. And so we said, hey, we just want to get as many people involved in this as humanly possible. Let's create an actual community around this that people can get excited, right? And let's make it virtually free. And so we did 0.1 stacks, for the mint. And then we didn't do much. I mean, we just, it was kind of serendipitous that I hopped on the Ordinal show that morning, and I was like, hey, we'll just start the mint right now.
Wow.
And we knew we were going to launch in about a week, and it went crazy that day, which was super fun to watch everyone just minting, and with the fast block times, people could mint things out really fast, and then they got these Androids, and people had all these bots trying to mint, so there were over almost 700 people that ended up minting these, and like a lot of people got to Androids. And so that was a super fun day. And then, as a part of that, because there were early contributors, we always kind of said, hey, it probably makes sense to launch a token for an NFT community just because it's more fluid, right? And you can have, you can participate for a lot less money, and you can trade it. And so like if there's ever DAO voting or anything else, like it just kind of makes sense. And so that was kind of always the plan. The way that we ended up launching it was, we just took 10%, and that was also a part of more of our contribution is to create a liquidity pool for that and burn that, right? So we don't have access to that anymore. So we created liquidity pool on Bitflow. There's also one on Valar and Alex. And so 90% of the supply just went to the people who minted out level 1, and pro rata based on how much they paid for that mint. So there's some early contributors that might have felt like, hey, I paid a lot for this mint, And so they now, I don't know where the price is today, but they definitely have more in Droid than they paid
Wow.
to be a
Yeah.
part of it. And so that was all just, again, us, taking time, energy, resources to create that for people. And so we did that. And so those two things are kind of set. One thing that we did realize, then there was it's good that Stacks ecosystem has this, is even though it's been out there for 2 years, there was like a small bug in the Nakamoto One NFT contract. It's like no one exploited it, and it was out there for 2 years and no one saw it. It's very small, but we will we're gonna have to launch just the NFT. It should be easy, but people will
Yeah.
have to kind of claim, or we'll airdrop the new ones so that people can mint out the rest of these androids, because not all of them have been minted out. And I really want to see, there's 1300 on the dot Android, so there's still 700 more that need to be minted, and they're just so cool looking. So we want to, like you said, the bootstrap side of this is, how do we continue this community forward, right? And how do people still, kind of gravitate towards that? And so what we're trying to do is create the resources and push this thing into being its own world. And so I think that is an exciting, bullish thing for that Nakamoto One community. How does Nakamoto One turn into potentially a media company for space companies, right? All these space companies, they really need marketing, they need attention. And I bet, like people like Lunar Outpost or even Intuitive Machines, like they got a lot of press, but the treasure hunt got on local news, and it was the reason that CNN actually wrote about some stuff. So if people are out there trying to build these cool companies, it's like, hey, how do you attach a community like Nakamoto One to that? To make it bigger than it already is, and create that virality online. And so I think that's kind of an interesting play there. And so how could we do that along with bring SBTC along for the ride? And that's kind of like where my mind's going. And so, yeah, working with the powers that be to try and make things like that happen, trying to bring new people into our ecosystem to just actually operate this thing. And so really looking to the community for that support, and for them to understand how much energy and time and effort that we've put into creating something that's a do good, I would say, for the community. And now really continuing to try and spin that off into something that's bigger and give the IP to that organization, hopefully maybe make it its own organization one day. And so if you're out there in the community listening, it's like, these are all the things that we've gone through to make this happen, for the ecosystem and for the holders, right? And then, like I said, also knowing that, LunarCrush is this other thing that operates thousands of customers and does this. So, if anyone's out there listening that wants to help, like, we are all ears.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a fantastic place to end on. I know anyone who's curious about the fate of the rover, it's worth looking into, but we're kind of
I
out
can
of
comment
time.
on that really quick if you want.
Yeah, let's go.
So the Intuitive Machines this was their second lander. So rocket goes up, SpaceX rocket opens up. This lander, takes the short way to the moon over like a week, trip, does like 37 laps around the moon, looking for the landing spot. They kind of know where they want to land, but like trying to get close. They did have a first lander that did land and then tip. And so, we knew that was out there, but, I was thinking iteration 2, they'd be good to go. But it did land I don't know all the details, but it landed somewhat in a crater and then it tipped again. And it tipped right onto its solar panels, so that there was no power that can come out of it. And so even in the image, you can kind of see where the rover's at. So the rover is still inside of the lander. It's on the moon. We might be the only successful mission on that lander. I don't know. The cool part, though, about this, I think, like you mentioned, sunken ship, that was a cool analogy. But the cool part about this is there's banks out there right now that are giving loans to real estate companies to build these huge projects. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, take 5% of this loan and we're requiring you to hold Bitcoin, right? And it's almost like an insurance policy of like a 4-year build or whatever that they're doing on these real estate projects or longer, to say, here's a hedge for you as your project, right? Like securitizing a hedge for you that's out there. There's something that's really interesting that happened with this project with Nakamoto One, is that if this lander tipped, there is no reason on Earth or in outer space or on the moon. There's no reason for anyone to go back to it, right? Unless it's like maybe there's massive civilization on the moon and people just like stumble upon it one day. Like once we really hit some sort of critical mass on the moon, that's very far away. So the interesting part is that if there's enough Bitcoin on there that makes it worthwhile to go back to this lander, right? It's almost like an insurance policy. And I asked Forrest about this. It's like, if you can just get this thing out, the rover out, and set it in the sunlight, the batteries potentially can charge and they can complete the mission, right? So you have this really interesting insurance policy on like space projects where it's like, hey, put enough Bitcoin on there and someone might go grab it. That was a, I don't know, $100 million launch altogether, building everything else. Like, what if they just took 3 million of that and they put it into Bitcoin at the very beginning, and now suddenly, there's $20 million sitting up there on the moon. It's like, hey, we can go tip your lander back up for you for 16 and then we'll take the 4. So it's just something that's like crazy that happened that, makes this even more, insane to think about, that, we threw up an insurance policy as well up there. And I really hope that something like that happens one day. It does make it a little bit tougher to get to the rover. Obviously, I think before, if the rover is just cruising around, you can just maybe get a robot. Maybe it's not as accessible. It probably still is. I've got to, at some point we'll do a deep dive with the Lunar Outpost team and be like, hey, here's how you do this, so we can give people kind of a head start on it. But I just love that we've got like an insurance policy on lunar landers and rovers now.
Exactly. I like how you put it, the insurance policy, but it could also help justify another attempt to get to that same area, and maybe have some arms that go out and can push it up. I mean, come on now.
I feel so bad. Can you imagine being in that control room and like you had tipped the first one, like as it like that? It's not the moment that you thought it. It's like the moment you realize it actually was tipped. You're just going, son of.
Yeah, not again.
So bad.
Oof.
It's. I mean, I can't. I mean, we just put a private key on there. I can't imagine, somehow like just building a thing. It's kind of like when I watch like the Roomba. You have one of those Roombas that works. Like people are like, it's so dumb, it can't get back. I'm like, imagine if you had to start from scratch with the Roomba just 1 foot away from where it had to dock, and that you could start there. Like, how would you get the Roomba? It's like, no, you can't even figure Roomba out.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough thing to do. I think people have a high bar, seeing what SpaceX has done. It's like catching the rocket on like its first time, the chopsticks or whatever it did. Like, that's just an insane bar.
Yeah.
But it's good. We're pushing each other forward.
That's right. Joe, what a great conversation. Thanks so much for walking us through the history of Nakamoto 1 and just all the inspiration. Love what you guys are doing with LunarCrush. So let's make sure we're sending everyone to all the right socials and sites. Your handle on X is Joe Vez, is that right?
Yep, at Joe Vez,Vezz.
Okay. Very
Nakamoto
good.
1, at Nakamoto 1. LunarCrush, just at LunarCrush.
There we go. And if you haven't already, just want to direct you again, go to the Nakamoto 1 X handle, check out the highlights so you can watch some of the videos, because it's just completely innovative and inspiring what's been done. So yeah, I'm looking forward to keeping track of what people are doing, how this, I honestly am surprised it hasn't had a bigger impact in the media, that there hasn't been more coverage, but maybe that is a signal of the social sentiment right now within the crypto and Bitcoin space.
Yep. Once it hits $1 million on there, I bet people will start talking a little bit more.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joe. Well, looking forward to having you back again next time.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for everything you do.
Appreciate it. Thanks. All right, everyone. So thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Joe, for being here. We are going to be back again next week. We're going to be talking with Alex and catching up with all the updates that's happening in the Stacks ecosystem. I know we touched a little bit about that on today's show as well, but there's always a lot of development. So check in next week, 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. And we'll see you next time. Thank you again. Thanks again for joining us in the Leather Lounge. We record each episode live every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to listen in or join us on stage, make sure to give us a follow on X at LeatherBTC. Leather is your gateway to everything Bitcoin, from DeFi to stacks, ordinals, runes, stamps, NFTs, and more. You can find loads of helpful crypto content on our YouTube channel and visit our blog and learn center at leather.io.